All right, Anthony Cangemi, welcome to Wealth Builders. I'm going to bring us in today. How about that?
I love it, man. That
You're,
sounded good.
you're listening to Wealth Builders. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore, and I'm here with our host, the man with the plan, Anthony Cangemi. Anthony, how are things going over there at Crescent City?
Tony, things are going really, really well, man. Thank you so much for that introduction. We just appreciate you so much, Tony. From all of the work you do with the advisors around the country and the labor of love and all the work you do with to be able to perform and edit these radio shows that you put out every week. We were just talking before the air. There's like 50 something shows that you run every week with advisors around the country. That's incredible, man.
Yeah. I've been doing it for a while. Over the last 12 years, I've recorded over 18,000 shows.
That's something, man. That's unbelievable.
That's a lot.
The wealth of knowledge. I mean, we were just talking before the show about of course, the big, beautiful bill, and then some of the advantages of the bill. And, again, the fact that you're exposed to so much of this every week, it just allows, it's not a typical co-host. I mean, it allows you, because you're so focused in this one area of retirement planning, it just, and being able to talk to top advisors around the country, it really puts you in really just a very, an incredible position to be able to stay, abreast of just the current topics from really day to day. So it's really invaluable resource you are, Tony, for the whole community.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I just have fun. I love being here with you each week, Anthony. And we've been doing this a long time. I've been doing these shows with various financial experts and advisors across the country for 12 years, as I mentioned. But the very first person I worked with in the financial industry, and the first person that was a part of this program that I set up, that I produced, was with you. You were the very first person. So that means you and I have been doing this show together for 12 years. How about that? As of, I think, a month or two ago.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's hard to believe, time flies, I guess.
When you're having fun, time flies, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Well, that's great. And I know we have a lot planned for the show today, a big topic, because we're talking about the big, beautiful bill, as it's called. And there's a lot in there. I mean, Anthony, there's over 1,000 pages. Over 970, almost 1,000 pages. So there's going to be things a lot of people don't like in the bill. There's going to be things people like. There's going to be good. There's going to be bad, depending on who you are and what your situation is, right?
Correct.
And we're going to go over some of those things. I mean, there's a couple things in here that I absolutely love, that are really good and that really do help middle class people and take off some of the tax burden for them and elderly people. There's other things that I'm like, I question, but I think that's the way it is for everybody. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. What do you think?
Well, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that there are certainly some things that you can pick out to say this is really helpful, and this is some of the things we're going to be focusing on. What are the aspects of the bill that speak directly to our clients, pre-retirees and retirees, and how, what the advantages are of the bill, and how it's going to ultimately benefit, as you say, the middle to upper class. But again, with 900 and some odd pages of the bill, certainly, and there are, different groups and different aspects of the bill, as any bill is going to, favor one scenario and then not be as good for someone else or some other situation. So one of the things that I can say right out the gate, Tony, is that with the big, beautiful bill, the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has been extended. So this is, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Tony, did a couple of things, but one of the primary things that I would say is that we lowered the marginal tax rates across various tax brackets, and
Yep.
these tax rates were not only lowered, but they were expanded, and that you could, the tax brackets were expanded and the tax rates were lowered. And we have been in many advisory firms, and have been advising their clients to take advantage of these tax brackets. Taxes are on sale, and they have been, and we knew that this was going to expire at the end of this year. So for clients that have been taking advantage of these tax brackets, i.e., doing Roth conversions or taking more taxable income out for more enjoyment in retirement, they could do it in a more tax-friendly way. And so taking advantage of these tax brackets with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the increased standard deduction that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act offered, okay, was again set to expire at the end of this year. So one of the things, and I would say probably the biggest thing with the big beautiful bill, is that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and these very friendly, if you will, tax brackets and this larger standard deduction is going to carry on. And so that is one aspect of the big beautiful bill that has come about.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that it's been extended is good because now it allows you to plan for that for at least the next couple of years. Of course, they say they've made it permanent, but as we know, nothing in Washington is truly permanent. It could change if another administration comes in, but you have to take advantage of what they give you and look at ways you can minimize your own tax burden by utilizing some of the changes and the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I mean, you were talking before the show began, we were talking about how, you jump from a 12% tax bracket to what, a 22.
Yeah,
So you
Tony.
don't want to be, you want to do whatever you can to stay in that 12 and not get to that 22, right?
If you can. And the other thing is, if you're in that 12 before it jumps to 22, and you still have room in the 12%
Yeah.
bracket, then by all means, you want to know that and you want to utilize that, whether it be because, again, Tony, when you think about a distribution strategy, all of us have been, from probably the time we were teenagers until the time we retire, we've been working and saving and working and saving and working and saving. And we call that the accumulation phase
Yeah.
of any of our financial life. We're paying off bills, paying off debt, and we're working and we're saving for retirement. Well, a lot of those savings vehicles, Tony, are pre-tax, meaning your 401k, your IRAs, any retirement accounts that you put in with pre-tax money, you're saving and you're not paying taxes on that money when you put it in, right, in the accumulation phase. But when the money comes out, it is taxable. So it's tax advantaged going in, right? When you put into your 401k, you're putting in with pre-tax money. You're not paying taxes on that money. So it's helpful going in, but when it comes out, Tony, it's all taxable. So the
Nice.
distribution strategy, once and I've seen the analogy, or people talk about climbing the mountain. They got this picture of Mount Everest, and there's people climb the mountain. Well, that's all the way up to retirement. You've climbed the mountain, you've accumulated. Now you have to come down the mountain, and that's the distribution phase. We got to take money out, but we want to do it how? In the most tax efficient way. So that's what we're talking about. We're
Yeah.
talking about the distribution strategy, and to do that in the most tax efficient way. And with all that said, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has been extended, we have these favorable tax brackets now living with us past 2025. So there's opportunities that people have that they didn't have before the big, beautiful bill.
Like the Roth conversion window stays open. You mentioned Roth earlier. So, with the tax rates staying low like they are, I mean, taxes right now, as far as federal taxes and those brackets are at an all-time low. So the window stays open to maybe do some Roth conversions, like you mentioned earlier, because you can probably do them and stay in a lower tax bracket depending on your situation. And you only want to do that if you think your taxes are lower now than they're going to be later in retirement. And I think we can assume they can't kick the can down the road too much further. Eventually, taxes will have to go up, and they have to, fix that. So there's a good chance taxes will go up in the future. I think most people believe that. So why not take advantage of the low rates and do Roth conversions? Right?
Well, absolutely, and it's not only your tax rates, but it's the tax rates of your heirs, your kids, that ultimately
Yes.
will receive that money. So the
Yeah.
money that they receive in pre-tax dollars, i.e., IRA, traditional IRAs, 401ks, if taxes haven't been paid on that money, then of course they have to pay taxes on the money, at their tax rate. So, Tony, the thing is with all of the pre-tax dollars, for any of our listeners that are listening and saying, hey, what are we talking about here? We're talking about pre-tax money in your IRA, your 401k, any retirement money that's pre-tax, okay? The question is not, do I have to pay taxes on this money? That is not the question. The answer to that is, of course you do. The question is, at what rate?
Yeah.
At what rate? And so managing your tax brackets and taking advantage of the bracket you're in and filling up the bracket, if you will, filling up the bracket without spilling over into the next bracket. So it's bracket planning, okay, is essential for a tax efficient distribution strategy. And to your point earlier, Tony, before we started the show, everything's taxed a little different. Like Social Security income is taxed differently, meaning it's not all taxable, only a percentage of your Social Security income is taxable.
Hmm.
So when you look at this distribution strategy, whether you're taking money from Social Security or whether you're taking money from your IRAs or whether you're taking money from a Roth IRA, which again is tax free, or non-qualified after-tax assets. All of these funds are taxed differently. So a tax distribution strategy, frankly, is just utilizing the tax efficiency as it relates to pulling money out. And I'm here to say, Tony, and I will say a couple of things. One, we're we might not be a lot smarter than we were 10 years ago, but the programs and the platforms that we utilize because of technology is a lot smarter.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the distribution strategies and the efficiencies that we can provide our clients today is just far advanced from what it was just 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
So
yeah.
having an efficient distribution strategy can save tens of thousands of dollars in taxes or more just by having an efficient strategy as it relates to taking money out of these retirement
Yeah,
accounts.
your withdrawals and you have to have a withdrawal strategy, which is a big
Correct.
part of what you do and the plan you come up with for the people you meet with and your clients. Now, regarding the big beautiful bill on today's big beautiful show that we're doing, what's the next thing in the bill that you noticed that our listeners might want to know about? What are a couple more things?
Well, a couple more things. So they talk about the SALT deduction cap was
Sure.
changed. So SALT stands for the sales
The
and
state and local taxes, right?
state and local
Yeah.
income tax and property taxes. It was at 10,000 cap, and now they moved it to 40,000 for the tax year 2025. So there's more now in our area. If this may benefit depending on the state and local taxes that you're paying. I know in some higher states like in New York and California, people are paying a lot more in
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
taxes than,
And
let's say,
Minnesota, where I'm from, we have high state taxes
high
comparatively.
high
Yeah.
state
Yeah,
taxes
New
that.
York, California, Minnesota, these states have pretty high tax rates. So as far as state and local taxes, well, that's good to know. At least that there's some relief there for some people. They bumped that up. That might not affect everybody. But
Correct.
let's move on to one of the bigger ones. I know there was a really big one you wanted to talk about that we need to cover today.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that's the senior deduction. If you're 65 or older, as we discussed, you get a pretty sizable standard deduction.
Yep.
Married, filing joint, Tony, 65 plus is 30,000. Then you get
Yep.
another 1,600. So you get like 31,600 as an example
Yep.
for married filing joint. They just added an additional 6,000 per person. So again, if you're married filing joint, this adds another $12,000 to your standard deduction. Now there are income limits, but the income limits for a joint filer before it starts phasing out, if you will, is up to $150,000. So let's
Yeah.
just say it depends on your income limits, but for many of our clients, they're going to get an extra, for the married couples, an extra $12,000 on top of the already increased standard deduction from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So I think you did the math
Huge.
before the show, Tony.
Yep.
What is that with all in with the standard deduction and the extra and then this
Yep.
additional 12? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, exactly, Anthony. I'm glad you brought this up because I couldn't believe it. When I first heard about this, I'm like, I got to double, triple check this and do the math. And I did. I checked a lot of the sources and the actual language from the bill. And if you add up, it's for a married filing jointly couple, it's the standard deduction is $30,000. If you're over 65, if you're a couple, there are two of you, you and your spouse, and you're both over 65, you each get $1,600. That's $1,600 per person in additional deduction on top of the standard deduction. And because of the big, beautiful bill, you now get on top of that, like you said, $6,000 each. That's another $12,000 for couples filing jointly. That adds up to $45,500 for married filing jointly couples over the age of 65. Their standard deduction for the next 4 years until 2028, from 2025 to 2028, those tax years, you will be able to have a standard deduction of over $45,000. Now, I mean, just think of the implications of that,
It's huge.
what that could do for somebody. I know it's going to mean that 88% of the people, because they can write that off their taxable income in retirement, won't have to pay any taxes on their Social Security. I think 88%, they said. So instead of being able, they didn't take away Social Security tax, but they did this in lieu of it.
Correct.
So the majority of people out there, what I like about this one, Anthony, is it really helps. You hear all the complaints about a lot of the tax benefits and the benefits of the big, beautiful bill benefit the wealthy. And there is a lot in there that will benefit wealthy and corporations. But this is hardline middle class, from lower to upper middle class. This is going to help the middle class, and it helps seniors. So this is my favorite part of the whole bill.
Oh, absolutely, Tony. And we run a tax calculator. It's really a tax planning platform that we run on all of our client reviews, and it actually reads the tax return, and then it brings out all of the observations. That's what I say. Technology is really off the charts today, but we can do this tax planning through this tax planning platform. And let me say, since July 4th and the big, beautiful bill, was implemented, the tax platforms have now incorporated all of the new, strategies in this, specifically this new deductible that we're talking about, or this additional standard deduction of this 6,000 a person. And let me just say, the tax planning has been off the charts as it relates to Roth conversions and seeing how it's affecting the Social Security tax in a positive way. I mean, it's just really a game changer for a lot of people, as you say, middle America, middle class has really been a huge benefit. And so, I would encourage our listeners, when you're, looking at your retirement plan, focus and make sure your advisors are focused on the distribution strategy and the tax efficiencies of the distribution strategy, in light of the new bill that was passed, because there's a lot in there that can really help you draw money out. As you say, we're talking about withdrawals, pull money out in a more tax efficient way. It just has to be, built out. We just have to make sure we're pulling the right money out of the right account at the right time. But you can build a tax efficient distribution plan today, that's light years ahead of what it was many years ago. And, the reason primarily, I would say, is your macro tax bill. Not just year to year, but what is it going to look like over 10, 15 years? How much did you pay Uncle Sam? And ultimately, you have required minimum distributions that have to be dealt with. So at some point, you're going to be forced to pull money out of these retirement accounts. So we want to make sure we have an efficient distribution strategy that also takes into account required minimum distributions. When that comes along, we want to make sure there's a nice transition, or a very efficient transition, through the RMD phase. Additionally, the money that passes on, pre-tax money, has to be taxed to the heirs. And because of the Secure Act, it used to be that they could inherit the IRAs and, they take RMDs for the rest of their life. Now they have that 10-year rule where all the money, if you're a non-spouse beneficiary, all the money has to be depleted over 10 years. So ultimately, taxes are going to be paid on this money. We know that. The question is, at what rate? And we want to make sure that you've got a distribution plan that's tax efficient, not only for you, but also for your heirs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big one, obviously. And, we talked a little bit about what it means for Social Security taxation. The act doesn't impact directly the taxation of Social Security because of some rules on, in order to make changes to Social Security, they have to have a supermajority vote and a special vote, so they couldn't add it in here. So instead, they did this with this, adding the $6,000 per person to those 65 and older. I think that's good. And you mentioned the phase out. You're right. It starts phasing out at 150,000. So if you make in retirement 150,000 or less, you're going to get that full 45,000 plus standard deduction if you're 65 and older, married, filing jointly. At over 150,000, it starts to phase out and it goes away completely at 175,000. So This one really is geared to help the middle class. And so, again, I think that's important. It's important to focus on seniors' needs because that's been a concern. I'm glad they did that. Another big thing was deduction for income on tips, right? That was part of the bill. Tell us a little bit about that, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. So, prior to the bill, folks, and especially, in our area, being we're in a, hospitality, mecca here
Yeah,
in New Orleans, in the New Orleans area, all of the, many of the work, restaurants, hotels, and a lot of the service providers. Um, at these establishments had to pay taxes on their tips,
yeah, and they rely heavily on tips
and
for
they,
their
and they rely
income.
heavily. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, waitresses, waiters, they're getting paid minimum, minimum wages, but as you say, they rely heavily on tips, and so this is something else that the bill did, and so again, back to what you're saying, Tony, about how a lot in here is really focused on middle class,
Yeah.
hardworking people.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, up to $25,000 of qualified tip income is now deductible. And again, that phases out also at 150,000 or
Yes, I mean
300.
that's incredible,
Yeah.
So I mean now they can get up to $25,000 of tips and
Yeah.
literally just write all and have a deduction there to just completely zero that income out. So
Yeah, that's
that's
that
big.
that's another huge one. Well, we've covered the biggest three things in the whole bill and more. So I think it's been a great show. Before we go, Anthony, let our listeners out there know how they can get a hold of you to set up that no charge, no obligation consultation to get a plan in place, a retirement income plan.
Absolutely. So just, first step, I would say visit us online at crescentcityretirement.com. All of our past shows, all of our distribution strategies are all there. Um, you know, really, if you are pre-retired, if you going to be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years, or if you're already in retirement and you're looking for a second opinion on a tax efficient distribution strategy, this is something that really shouldn't, especially in light of the new bill that extends the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, extends the tax efficiencies of a distribution strategy, also adds additional tax breaks to the standard deduction. Really, there's no better time to get really dial in your tax efficient distribution plan. And by all means, we can provide that second opinion at Crescent City Retirement Group. You can call our office at 504-828-2171 or visit us online at crescentcityretirement.com. Let our staff know that you heard Tony and I talk about tax efficiency distribution planning on the air, and we can certainly put that second opinion together for you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Anthony. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Wealth Builders with our host, Anthony Cangemi.